Hi, everybody. This is Jeremiah, and today I've got Paul with me, and we're going to be doing a Trials and Triumphs. We wanted to talk a little bit with you about destiny in your life. Paul was going to relate a story to us about when he was in the eighth grade. Eighth grade, right, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, when he was in the eighth grade and got electrocuted in a science classroom experiment that went haywire. Turns out we don't do those kind of experiments anymore in school, so... But we'll go ahead and get started. So, Paul, I've heard this story. I've heard this story many times as a kid, and this is one of your few stories that I never wanted to live up to. But good story. So, how about you just start us off, Paul? To kind of lead off with what led up to your electrocution in science class.
Well, I can. Let me begin before that, because the question in my life has always been, is God guiding me? Do all things work together for the good? How does a person know when God is saying, "Hey, I've got my hand on you, and you're going to go where I want you to go"? And I think mine starts when I was 2 months old, and I was in the hospital, and I had developed double pneumonia, and the doctor, I still remember, not then, but later, because she's still a doctor years later, came to my mom, and because my real father had abandoned us, and so it was just my older sister and my mom and me. But the doctor came to my mom and said, look, his temperature is spiking between 104 and 105, and we either have to bring his temperature down or it will destroy his brain. And he said, what we're going to do is we're going to put him in an ice bath, and we're hoping that that's going to lower his temperature, and if he can live through the night, then we have hope that he will survive this. But she looked at my mom and she said, now you've got to remember something, Bessie, because the damage that were done to the lungs, he will never be normal. He will never be able to run and play. He'll never be in normal activities because his lungs are so severely scarred that he will not be able to breathe on a normal basis. And my mom took it in by herself. And as she told me later, she went after the doctor left. She turned to God and she said, God, if you will let him live, I promise I will give him to you. He will be yours. I will, instead of owning him, he's yours. Almost like Hannah did for Samuel. And so, as to say, the night went on, and obviously I survived. And the beautiful thing about it, up to that point in time, I suffered no repercussions of the double pneumonia. As you guys know, I can be very loud and active and run and have been all my life. So I would say God healed me, because otherwise I would have succumbed to the disease. Well, years go on in this, and my mom tells me about this. She says, I gave you to God. And I'm like, oh, great. You sold me, and I didn't have a chance to decide where I wanted to go. I resented it, actually. Oh, you'll be okay because you're God's. No, I'm not. I'm my own. Well, didn't come along, and in most people, when they go to church all their life, they get saved at an early age. Me, no. And I'd look around and people would say, you need to find the Lord. And I'm like, look, if I'm as good as that guy sitting over there who calls himself a Christian, ain't no reason for me to be a Christian. I don't want it, because that would fall into play with what my mom said, and I don't want to be trapped. And so I was in the eighth grade, and we were having a science experiment. We were using step-up transformers, and tying together with a 120 to increase the voltage or wattage, whatever it was. And I had a lab partner, and I was standing at the desk, and we had it all there, and I had we split the wire in two. I had like the black wire, and he had the white wire, and he took it to the transformers. And so we were going to charge them and then discharge them. Anyway, he bumped the table, and I saw the transformers start to fall over. Well, when they did, I reached out and grabbed them to steady them. When I did, I got the other wire, so it connected me directly to the 110. And so I'm standing there, and I know what's happening. I'm shaking violently, and I'm thinking, if I can just let go of these wires, I'll be okay. And I could not open my hand. I mean, have you seen the old story of the frog that you touch with electric shock and it pulls up? And I couldn't let go, and I just couldn't let go. And my lab partner saw what was happening, but he just froze. He's like, oh my gosh. And so I'm standing there like this, and I don't know what to do. I can't do anything. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the electrical charge flung me back against the blackboard. I was about 3 foot away from the blackboard, and it just blasted me, and I hit the blackboard with my whole body. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the next thing I do, I realized not that I was falling, but that the floor was jumping up at me. It was going to hit me in the face. And I didn't realize the concept of falling, but I was there at that close point of blacking out and damaging and dying. And I remember on my way down, split second moment. I mean, it was almost like something, but it was frozen time. And I heard this voice that say, are you ready to meet God? And I said, no, I'm not. And I got this horrible, horrible feeling on the inside of, oh my God, I've really messed up. And then I blacked out. When I came to, when my other friend who was in the class with another lab partner saw what was going on, ran over, knocked my lab partner away, and pulled the plug. And so then I woke up, and everywhere, even today, on my hand where I had the end of the wire of the thing, it burned a hole in my hand, probably 1/4 of an inch deep there. And everywhere I had a scar on my hand, it seared it out. So you can know how long it would cook me. Mm-hmm. And of course, horrible smell of burning flesh. But anyway, and then the teacher was so horrified, because like, oh man, I screwed up. You nearly killed a student. And he said, are you okay? And I'm going, uh-huh. So I sit down. I survived that. But still, oh my God. You can't imagine that feeling of facing eternity and knowing you're not ready. So let's fast forward from the 8th grade. I was 19, and I was preaching the gospel. My cousin and I were evangelists, and so Ricky Vile. So we were going to go to Dallas to preach in this little church. And before we went, I can remember we were leaving on Friday to get down there from Amarillo down to Dallas. So God spoke to me, and he said, you're going to die. You're going to have a wreck, and you're going to die. And I mean, it was so real, so emphatically real. And it was not me. It was real. And I was so convinced of it that I went to my mom, and of course, not my stepfather, because he was so out of the picture, not even real. But I told my mom, I said, Mom, look, I'm going to Dallas, but I'm not coming back. And she's, of course, anything like that would blow your mind. I said, I'm going to have a wreck, and I'm not coming back. So she's like, okay, well, we'll see you Sunday. I'm like, okay, Mom. Well, I tried. After it's over, you'll realize that I told you goodbye. So I went to Rick, and we were talking about going, and I said, Rick, I said, I got to tell you something. I'm going to Dallas. I'm going to have a wreck, and I'm not coming back. And I said, so you may not want to go. I said, the least you don't want to take your car. It was brand new. It's got a brand new car. And he said, Mike, we've been through everything. We were cousins too. Mike, we've been through everything. I don't care. Whatever happens to you happens to me. I said, okay, Rick. As long as you know, I warned you. So we got in Sunday night. We're down there, no problem at all. Sunday night. I preached so hard, and it was so long. We were so tired. We were coming back. And I wasn't driving, so you can realize I wasn't predestining myself to do this. Rick was driving. And I remember I was laying over, and I didn't have the seatbelt on, but I had it laid across my neck to hold it up. And I was to drive next when we got to Abilene. And so I looked up, remember I raised up, and I saw the lights in the city. I said, Rick, what is that? And he said, that's Abilene. I said, oh, great. Are you okay? And he said, yeah. I laid my head down, and then all of a sudden, I felt my body just jerk to the side. And then all of a sudden, I heard this crash. And what happened, Rick had gone to sleep and pulled over and hit the median in the middle of the road, hit the guardrail, the middle of the road. And I mean, it was impacting. And so what happened, we took out 90 feet of guardrail. I mean, we crunched it because he was going, I don't know how fast. And we took it out. The car flipped upside down and spun around. And I can remember so distinctly because I had Sarah, my wife, I had her picture in a frame in the seat beside me, and had glass. And I didn't realize I was upside down. All I realized is how funny that glass was floating up in the air. And I'm going, God, that's strange. I didn't realize that. But I was still upside down. And then the black back glass that, of course, burst out. And all our clothes and everything was just sliding out the back. And I felt myself starting to slide out the back window. And later we found our shirts or suits, what we had, and they were just perforated with glass. I mean, they were just torn to shreds with the glass. And it started to go out. And all of a sudden, quiet. No sound, no motion. And I heard this voice. Same voice as when I was in the 8th grade. And it said, Mike, you're going to die. And for that millennial of second, I said, it's okay, God. I'm ready. I'm ready. Peace in the midst of this horrible chaos just overwhelmed me. And I'm like, it's okay. All of a sudden, we hit something, we're not sure, but it spun the car over, flipped it over the guardrail, and landed it on the other side of the highway. And I said, Rick, are you okay? And he said, yeah, we had to kick out what was left of the front glass and get out because the car was smashed. And so we got out, wasn't hurt, wasn't cut, no broken. The only thing that broke was Rick's had a knuckle that was cracked. He hit something. And we got out. And we looked at it, and in a few minutes, we were waving the car down saying, we need a highway patrolman or something. So a highway patrolman came up, and he told us, and he said, who are the guys in the wreck? And we said, we were. He looked at us, and he said, no, you weren't. I said, yeah, we were. We were in that wreck. He said, man, you couldn't have been in that wreck. He said, that car's totaled. Well, we were. So we get back and we have to go to Greyhound bus, and we take a bus from Abilene to Amarillo because we had nothing else with our ragtag, whatever we had left. And I called my mom. Of course, it was 3 a.m. I called and I said, Mom, I just want you to know we had a wreck, but we're okay. My mom, precious lady. Okay, I'll see you when you get here. All right, Mom. Sounds cool, Mom. Sounds cool. So we got home, and the thing about it, Ricky's watch broke at 3:18. Well, the next day I get a call from Roy Page, who was my dear mentor, dear friend. He was my father, really my spiritual father. He said, Mike, are you okay? And I said, yeah, what are you talking about? And he said, last night, I woke from a dead sleep, and the Lord told me, you need to pray for Mike and Rick. And he said, I didn't know where you were. I didn't know what was going on. But I said, yep, you got it, Lord. He got down on his knees. He looked at his alarm clock. It was 3:17. This other woman who'd been really a spiritual guide in my life called me and said, Mike, are you okay? And I said, well, yeah, because we didn't tell anybody about it, and we weren't broadcasting it. And she said, why? She said, well, because I was awakened last night, and the Lord told me to pray for you. Now, a lot of people have said, and I've got other instances where I shoulda, coulda, woulda been killed. And my life has been eventful that way. But people say, well, if God told you you were going to die and you didn't, how do you explain that? I said, what died was the fear of death. I no longer feared dying. I knew that I knew that I knew that God was there with me, and that no matter what happened, until God decided my time, that was my time. And so I look back at that and I say, God, you're omnipotent. Everything is in your hands. Everything is in your guidance. These things don't happen except they're for the purpose of providing purpose and destiny for a life. And that time on, I began to realize, if I live into the Lord. If I die into the Lord. And whether I live or die, I am the Lord's. It doesn't really matter. So that is my journey of believing that I have seen the end, and yet I see the providence and the sovereignty of God saying, not until I say so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Paul. That's a powerful story, and I really enjoy listening to you tell these in this context, because I think it hits at a different emotional level for you when it's just you and I telling these as opposed to you preaching. But I really find it valuable to hear those things and meaningful and important to me. Something that I'm struck by as you talk about that is you've been preaching a lot lately on the idea of sovereignty. And in some respects, the idea of like the radical idea of sovereignty feels like this very cold, dry thing. God's going to do what he's going to do, and that's just what he's going to do, and that's just how he is and who he is. And although that's truthful, there's a flip side to the coin of sovereignty that I hear you telling here, is that God's going to do what he's going to do, and as long as we acknowledge and know that he's doing that, we know that God is God, there's a peace that can come with that. There's a peace that can get you because he was there with the Hebrew children in the fiery furnace. He shut the mouth of the lion. He was right there beside Christ when he was dying on the cross, right up to the point that he took on the sins of the world. He followed him as absolutely far as he could. And he was there when the car rolled over and was sliding on the top. He was there. He took the time to be there. So even though he's sovereign and he's God, and whatever the greatness of the universe, he's sovereign over all the universe, he still takes the time to step down into our lives and still be there with us, even in his sovereignty. No matter how good or how bad it is for us, he's right there beside us in that.
You're so right, Bear. You're so right. And it causes us, when we see those things, it causes us to know he doesn't have to because he's God. He doesn't have to because we're so important. He does it because that's his nature. He's more comfortable when we call him Abba Father than we are when we call him King of Kings.
Yeah.
Because kings we don't understand, but Abba, Daddy, we understand.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Paul.
Thank you.
That was very meaningful to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for Trials and Triumphs. At Sanctuary Family Farms, we want to be real. Whether that's through our blogs, daily verses, or even Nana's recipes, we want to share the messages that God has laid on each of our hearts. If you liked what you heard today or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Sanctuary Family Farms or our website at www.sanctuaryfamilyfarms.com, where we share our recipes and blogs. We can't wait for you to join us again for next week's episode.